Allison said she might be 5 minutes late.
Okay. Okay, I would like to call to order this Highland Park Board of Education hybrid workshop voting meeting. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Courier News and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening. Roll call.
Dr. Beatty?
Here.
Ms. Cassell-Dunn? Dr. Coleman? Mr. Maldonado?
Here.
Dr. Pixley?
Here.
Ms. Bruce?
Here.
Dr. Spoolman? Ms. Stanio?
Here.
Ms. Vargman?
Here.
Okay.
After you read that.
Yeah. Be it resolved pursuant to the Sunshine Act, the Highland Park Board of Education will now meet in closed session to discuss matters related to personnel and legal matters. These exemptions are permitted to be discussed in closed session in accordance with NJSA 10:4-13. Information regarding the board's closed session discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay. I move that we reconvene to regular session.
Second.
Roll call.
Dr. Beatty?
Here.
Cassell-Dunn?
Here.
Dr. Coleman? Mr. Maldonado?
Here.
Dr. Pixley?
Here.
Ms. Bruce?
Here.
Dr. Spoolman? Ms. Stanio?
Here.
Ms. Vargman?
Here. And now we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we received a few emails around error in board material regarding the number of children with type 1 diabetes in the middle school, a recognition of Christopher Brzezowski, and the recent bus funding decision. I move that we approve the minutes from the June 22nd meeting.
Second. Dr. Beatty? Ms. Cassell-Dunn? Yes. Mr. Maldonado?
Yes.
Dr. Pixley? Yes. Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Dr. Spoolman?
Yes.
Ms. Stanio?
Yes.
Ms. Vargman?
Yes. And now we can move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So I'm going to begin my report tonight by introducing Mr. Justin Grossman. We're really excited after, hopefully you all read my message that went out to the school community. It was a very lengthy search, very thoughtful search, but we're really excited. I'm really excited to recommend Justin tonight. I just wanted to share some brief responses that I got from Justin's references. And so this is a first for Justin as well. The quotes were brilliant educator, phenomenal educational coach, and is able to balance sharp intelligence with a warm, approachable demeanor, looks at data analytically, coaches teachers empathetically, and inspires students enthusiastically. So I am really excited to welcome Justin Grossman to share a brief introduction. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Justin Grossman, and it is an honor to stand before you as the next prospective principal of Irving School. Becoming principal of Irving is a responsibility I do not take lightly. It's a privilege to lead a school entrusted with the education and care of our youngest learners. And while I know it will take time to learn the traditions and unique strengths of the Highland Park community, there are 3 promises that I can make you today. First, I will work to ensure that every student, staff member, and family feel seen, valued, and that they truly belong at Irving. Second, every decision I make will be grounded in one guiding question, and that is this in the best interest of our children? And finally, we will never stop growing. Education is constantly evolving, and while we will honor what makes Irving special, we will also embrace thoughtful, intentional growth that helps every child and every educator reach their fullest potential. I want to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Suska, and the entire Irving community for placing your trust in me. I'm excited to listen, to learn, and begin this journey together. I look forward to participating with all of you as we build on Irving's strong foundation and continue creating an exceptional experience for every child. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll move on now to the more formal part of my report tonight, which is our chronic absenteeism corrective action plan. All right, so the Department of Education put out a blast to all districts that fit into a criteria that have data that suggests significant issues with chronic absenteeism. Highland Park, like many districts in New Jersey, actually fall in this category. So the NJDOE is requiring us to put together a corrective action plan, not for board approval, but for QSAC purposes. So as part of our QSAC updates and as part of our ESSA accountability. So all of the corrective action plan items that you see in here are in the school's ESSA reports for their title funding as well. So our plan is to address chronic absenteeism and promote regular school attendance. So a couple of things about the state statute, just to sort of reorient that the Department of Education would like me to share with everybody. If 10% or more of the students enrolled in a public school are chronically absent, the school shall develop this cap. So because we fall in that, we are developing our cap. In developing the corrective action plan, the school shall solicit input from parents of students currently attending the school, and you'll see that a little later in my presentation. At a minimum, this will include a parental survey. The school shall present the cap to the Board of Education, what I'm doing for you all tonight, and the school shall annually review and revise the cap and present to the board until the percentage of students who are chronically absent is less than 10%. So you'll get updates, and then we will continue providing updates and monitoring our cap and redoing it as much as we need to until we hit our target. So some facts about chronic absenteeism per the New Jersey Department of Education. It's defined a student is chronically absent if they miss 10% or more of the days they're enrolled in school, and this includes any absence. A student is chronically absent if they have missed as few as 2 days of school beginning in September. So it starts, right away in September, and a student is chronically absent if they've missed as few as 2 days of school. I'm sorry, that was a duplicate. Again, 2 days of September. So does chronic absenteeism include locally excused absences? Yes, it does. Chronic absenteeism is defined as having missed 10% or more of those school days for any reason. This includes excused or unexcused absences. And I know that's been something that we've been talking about for a while because this isn't the first time that we've talked about our chronic absenteeism problem. That's been a reoccurring theme in our state report card. So it's important to note that although we have some definitions of what we collect locally as excused, it doesn't matter. So there's a slide that's coming up that will reveal what the state will determine as actually being excused, but being sick or a parent note, a doctor visit, things like that, don't fall into that category. So it doesn't matter, it's 10%. So chronic absenteeism is a primary cause of low academic achievement and a powerful predictor of students who may eventually drop out of school. Attending school every day increases chances of success in school and in life. And by the sixth grade, along with the grade point average, absenteeism is a top predictor of that dropout. So obviously coming to school is really important. Again, can a student be locally excused and still be considered chronically absent? And the answer is yes. So the Department of Education does give us some leeway in terms of local decisions. But again, so the district discretion is to determine which absences constitute as excused or unexcused for local purposes, not for state purposes. So there is definitely a difference, and decisions pertaining to promotion, retention, and grades are made at that district level. That's why the state gives local control, because we can decide. So chronic absenteeism is a state definition, but locally we can decide excused or unexcused and how we use that information. So the board could decide in policy to say, if a student is chronically absent, unexcused or something like that, we might not want to promote them to the next grade, or we could retain them, things like that. So there's definitely some local control from that, but just for reference, the data suggests that retaining students as they get older is not beneficial for them socially and emotionally. So we really only kind of look at that information really at a granular level, more at the primary level. A student is considered chronically absent when they're not present 10% or more, what they call days in membership. This includes locally excused and unexcused absences. And here's that list that I was referring to that are state excused. So the following list are the only time that the state says that a student can be excused from school. That's a religious observance, and the state puts out a whole list of what those dates are. Observance of Veterans Day, Board of Election membership activities, Take Your Child to Work Day, college visits, but there is a limited number for that, college visits, closure of busing school district, or one civic event for students in grades 6 through 12. So I just wanted to, I'm not going to go through all of the data in particular. It'll be available for view when the board bulletin comes out to the community. But again, this is information that if you go through our school performance reports, you'll see that. But some of our data for the high school data, so what our corrective action plan has to include is the last couple of years of data. So you can see going back to 23-24, at the high school, 16% of the students were chronically absent, so 84 students, and then you can see the breakdown, 33% ninth grade, 24% 10th grade, 19% grade 11, and 24%. And then the 24-25 school year, 128 students were chronically absent, which was 25% school-wide. And then 25-26 school year, 77 students were chronically absent, which was 15% school-wide. And we just included some notes for the CAP that right now we have 15 parent notes can be used for excused absences, extended vacations, and medical. So this is above and beyond the percentage of the 10%. Middle school data, again, 23-24, 76 students were chronically absent, which was 22% of the school. During the 24-25 school year, 77 students were chronically absent, which was 25% school-wide. And this past year, 25-26, 79 students were chronically absent, 25% school-wide. At Bartle, during the 23-24 school year, 100 students were chronically absent, which was about 23.4% school-wide. 24-25, 83 students, which made up about 20.5% school-wide, and 25-26, 67 students were chronically absent, making up about 16% school-wide. Again, with the same information for notes. At Irving, we only included kindergarten and first grade since we don't have the preschool data to go back. Preschool is a bit of a moving target because if students are absent, they lose their spot because there's a wait list because we only have so many spots. So we did not include preschool for that. So kindergarten and first grade in 23-24, 55 students were chronically absent, which made about 23% school-wide. 24-25, it was 77 students chronically absent, about 24%. And 25-26, 53 students chronically absent at about 25%. So a couple of things in terms of identifying students at risk for chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism affects students across all demographics. So when we looked at that data, what we found was although it did impact, it affects all students, particularly students, low-income students and white students represented the largest share of our chronically absenteeism students. So when we dissected it by our different demographics, we actually found low-income and white students represented the largest share of our chronically absentee population. The 3-year trend data show that the demographic composition of chronically absentee students has remained relatively consistent. So you can see that with the data, the percentages are about the same, with some decline in the share of Hispanic and Black chronically absent students over time. So we've seen some great growth there. There were some reporting contributing factors, including transportation barriers and family working obligations, particularly for low-income students. So when we put the survey out, we found that that was some of the information that came back to us. And at the building levels being used to target interventions and monitor progress under the district's corrective action plan. So in terms of the development, we did the parental survey. So a survey went to parents and caregivers through Thrillshare, and we used our new survey platform, which allows families to select their language of choice, and it gives a whole range of languages. So we were able to target everyone with that. We received 57 responses, so unfortunately quite low, but we're not going to stop. So we had 57 responses. Of the 57, 33% of the responses came from Irving, 35 came from Bartle, 35 came from middle school, and 31 came from the high school. So the good news is we did get a good share, evenly distributed amongst all 4 buildings, which was good. Some of the responses that came from the parent and caregiver survey, the data suggests that illness is the primary barrier to attendance, with 66.7% of respondents identifying it as the main reason for absences. Several other factors were reported by roughly 1/4 of the families, including anxiety, lack of interest or engagement in school, sleep habits, indicating that both student well-being and school engagement played important roles in attendance, and travel and family schedules or childcare challenges were other notable contributors. And that was by the percentage. There was some open-ended comments, a lot of information that came from that. So the principals and I synthesized that into a couple of key bucket areas. So some of the key feedback was, and they would like to see an increase in student engagement. So that student engagement, kids didn't want to go to school because they weren't engaged. Providing more support for mental health. So although we do offer really robust mental health support district-wide, it seems like we could probably do better in that category. Parents would like to see improvement in school climate and safety, transportation and childcare barriers, school schedules was a reoccurring theme as well as strengthening communication, particularly around attendance initiatives and recognition, and maintaining flexibility for legitimate absences. So that was some of the feedback that came out of the survey. So what I'll review now as part of our corrective action plan are the tiered strategies that are currently in place. So these are the things that we're currently doing around chronic absenteeism by school. So at the high school, as a tier 1 strategy, so tier 1 meaning that it's universal. So tier 1 is just school-wide universal strategies. Tier 2 and 3 that I'll get into in the coming slides for each of the schools are really more targeted for those students that are presenting with more concern. So school-wide for the high school, they do some positive school culture and climate. The high school uses the following strategies to support students in wanting to come to school: restorative practices, positive behavior interventions. They do the Golden Owl Awards. Morning greetings for all students. If you go to the school, you see Dr. Donovan or Mr. DePayne there greeting every student with excitement coming in to learn. And culture celebrations. They use a team who are able to research and access barriers to attendance as another tier 1 strategy. So they use their INRS meetings, intervention and referral services meetings, and their school improvement / school leadership team meetings that focus on up-to-date research on promotion of attendance, as well as early interventions such as having teachers make phone calls when a student is absent to say that they were missed in class. So really more trying to use that, the teams that we have in place to really support a more positive culture of saying, we miss you, come in, we miss you, come to school. In addition, they seek resources for support such as a mentorship program. So they reach out to community partners to see what supports they can provide to students based on needs such as transportation, mentorship, healthcare support, mental health supports. They ensure these resources are known by all students and then targeted for those that have early attendance indicators. So 5 absences in the first 45 days. So we have key indicators that kind of let us know when students should be on the radar. Another tier 1 strategy for the high school, they discuss the importance of attendance with parents at back to school night, morning announcements, and about the importance of attendance. I think Dr. Donovan has her 3 A's, attitude, achievement, and attendance. I know attendance is one of them. I know attitude is the other. And this is a good practice and allows for students to hear multiple times throughout the year about the importance of attendance and keeping the students and caregivers aware of the attendance. And then an automatic call home for attendance that has to be, so attendance needs to be accurately taken during the first block to ensure all students are accounted for. So we take attendance and then phone calls go home if we're missing some students. And I think that's a theme in all 4 of the buildings. At the tier 2, 3 strategy, they have teen center attendance groups they started this past year. So 19 students were targeted in this support group and assigned counselors that discussed reasons for absences. Data was collected and support was provided to the students and caregivers. So perform care, food pantries, referrals for mental health support, and career or vocational career resources. They have letters generated to give caregivers through Genesis, as well as conversations with the youth safety specialist and vice principal. They said that this was a good effort. They don't know how much it changed the outcome. The youth safety specialist continuously has conversations with students each day and plays a big role in their attendance review board. They have a credit recovery tiered support program. Their reflection on it was the tiered credit recovery program provided more opportunities for students to gain backseat time related to absenteeism. The program provided reflection opportunities with staff and time to get assistance with work. So they were trying that. The residency checks and wellness visits done by our youth safety specialist and the district residency officer. So they would like for a reflection, some more support from the board policy and courts, municipal intervention when students are chronically absent. We could think about having teachers meet with students as attendance mentors. So they're trying to be reflective on like some of the things that they could still continue to do moving forward. So some of the high school's areas for improvement after their reflection of all those strategies for tardies to school. Some of the factors contributing towards that chronic absenteeism, they said there are an excessive amount of tardies every day. Every 3 tardies is converted to 1 unexcused absence. So every 3 equals 1 absence. With a 7-day rotating schedule, students can accrue multiple daily tardies, but the effect does not have the same impact on their classes because of the way the schedule is set. Credit recovery reports are generated through Genesis in October to keep track of students who are going to lose credit or lost credit, and caregivers are given notice for each course. In addition, a contributing factor they believe is policy. The policy allows for 15 parent notes before we start marking absences as unexcused. It'd be helpful if our policy aligned with state in terms of how we record unexcused absences. So some of the action items that they are going to do as part of their corrective action plan for this coming year. So a universal strategy is going to be continue working on climate and culture in the building through targeted measures to hope decrease in the tardinesses and absences. So you can see the people involved and then the title of those people. Another universal strategy is to continue working with intervention and referral services and their school improvement teams and school leadership teams to research best practices and assess barriers to attendance. Leverage community resources to find supports that meet any barrier to attendance concerns. Continue working with the attendance review board. So every building has an ARB, an attendance review board, to review those absences. Continue working with their student accountability time. Continue with student accountability time, SAT, as a result of missing seat time. Having more structured and regular student meetings about attendance as students accrue more. And then identify at-risk students and assign a point person to develop personal connections, like a teacher, a counselor, or a coach at the individual. So a small group, and then an individual action item. More individual action items that they'd like to do this year: call students and parents into team meetings to discuss attendance concerns and goals, write individualized plans for students with absence issues and have parents sign off on that plan, and have family liaison meet with students and parents after school to review the importance of being in school. For the middle school, here are some reflections on their current strategies that they are using. For the middle school, a current strategy they use at Tier 1 is discuss the importance of attendance with parents at back to school night, class meetings to discuss the importance of attendance, and students under the age of 16 meet with the vice principal once they accrue 4 unexcused absences. And their reflection, they said it's a good practice. It allows for students to hear multiple times throughout the year about the importance of attendance and keeps the students and caregivers aware of attendance. They also do automatic phone calls home as well. They said that attendance needs to be accurately taken in the first block to ensure all students are accounted for to do that. The Tier 2-3 strategy, they send letters home in Genesis and there's meeting with the principal or assistant principal. They said this was a good effort, but they don't know how much it changes the outcome. They need consequences for excessive lates and absences. They also, for a current strategy, do grade levels call parents at grade level team meetings, and they have attendance initiatives. And they said that also a good effort, but they don't know how much it changes the outcome. They can make more incentives for individual students versus like whole class or whole grade. I think they had like some sort of dodgeball-y kind of game in the gym for the grade level that won or something like that. The counselor meets with individual students as they are approaching chronic absenteeism. They said that we can celebrate students more on an individual level to see if that inspires others to be present. And then another current strategy that they do is they have the residency, we have the residency officer. If there's a connection between residency and attendance, this helps. We use our family liaison to do wellness checks. We also seek help with municipal intervention when necessary. And they would like to see more support with board policy. They think that having teachers meet with students as an attendance monitor might also assist in that as well. So here is what they say about factors contributing toward the chronic absenteeism. They noted the tardies to school as being a big issue as well. There are excessive amount of tardies every day. There are no consequences for being tardy to middle school. And policy, again, the same, allows for 15 parent notes. Middle school areas for improvement here are their action items at the universal level. Tier 1, form a subcommittee of school leadership team to meet with and work with the courts about attendance issues and consequences. The idea for that for municipal intervention is that they have access to resources far beyond what we have that we can't access unless we initiate something with them. So it's not a penalization, it's actually a way for us to get more support. So what we do is we exhaust all of the options that we can do locally. And if we've exhausted all of those and they have very comprehensive notes that they take on that, after we feel that we've exhausted all the options, then we seek municipal intervention because they're able to provide more resources and support beyond what we can provide. And I know I've spoken about this in the past, even so much as we get our social workers involved. We've collected items to give people for winter coats, rain boots, raincoats, umbrellas, because people will say they can't come because of the weather. So we try to do all of those interventions to get people to come when they are facing barriers. They're looking to maybe implement the student accountability time. So they've seen some great success at the high school. So the middle school was thinking about maybe doing a very similar initiative, have more structured and regular student meetings about attendance as students accrue more. Call students and parents into team meetings to discuss attendance concerns and goals. Write individualized plans for students with absence issues and have parents sign off on them as well. And then having the family liaison meet with students and parents after school to review the importance of being in school. For Bartle, here's what Bartle shared as some of their current strategies and their reflection on their strategies. So Bartle has classroom morning meetings to form relationships with peers. And they say students are able to have a soft start, reducing the amount of tardies. So they have a little buffer time in the morning so that they don't really mark tardies until after that sort of morning meeting time. There's automated calls home when absent, and then parents often call to document for reasons or parents often called to document reasons for absences and their school-wide incentives for attendance percentages. Students engage in activities. However, at this age, the ability for students to get to school is more of a parental responsibility in some of our cases. At a 2-3 level for tiers, when students accrue 5 or more unexcused absences, a letter is sent home. Their reflection is parents often call or email in response to letters to seek clarification on the absence policy. When students have 10 or more unexcused absences, an email is sent home to parents notifying them of the attendance policy and offering support. Their reflection is parents often call, but many share that the absences are due to illness or transportation concerns. In-person attendance meetings called when there are a high number of absences with no documentation for reasons of absences, and their reflection is parents often don't show up or respond to the meeting notifications. And another strategy is the assistant principal calls home to families with consistent absence to offer support, and many parents share that absences are due to illness and or transportation concerns. So that's sort of outside of what we can provide. Some of the factors that Bartle is reporting that factor toward their chronic absenteeism, they said parental understanding of school district policy, the school and district policy. They said that parents often are confused about the differences between our district and state policies. In the survey, many families indicated the child's absences are primarily due to illness, medical needs, family circumstances, or educational opportunities. Families ask for reasonable flexibility and understanding in attendance policies, including tardy procedures and documentation requirements in accordance with law versus policy and regulation. And they said us the same for the policy for the 15 parent notes beyond the 10%. Some of their action items for a universal strategy, this year they're going to try additional in-class programming related to the importance of attendance and the impact on both academic and social growth. They're going to try to continue a subcommittee of the school leadership team to meet to identify attendance concerns and supports. They're going to have more structured small group student meetings about attendance and supports in small group. And at tier 3, call guardians into team meetings to discuss attendance concerns and goals, include students when appropriate. At Irving, all of these were determined under our previous leadership. So maybe under new leadership, they might change, but this is what we're going to put in place. So at the tier 1 level, some of their current strategies that they used this past year included discussing the importance of attendance with parents at back to school night, morning announcements about the importance of attendance. And they said this was good, but not effective for chronic absence students because they're not there to hear it. They do an automatic call home after 10 absences, and they reported it was partially effective. At the 2-3 level, getting more small group and individualized, letters home in Genesis and meeting with parents. They said this was a good effort, but they don't know how much it changed the outcome. And they would like to see consequences for excessive lates and absences. For preschool students, staff reach out to parents and caregivers frequently to explain the importance of school attendance. They said this strategy works well for preschool. If they don't attend, they potentially risk their spot because there is a wait list. So that was like kind of a really good incentive for preschool to attend, which is great. And they have a residency officer, and then again, a connection between residency and attendance. They use the family liaison as well. We have one district-wide family liaison, Mr. Harrison, who supports all 4 buildings in that capacity. And they said that was a good effort as well. The 2 areas that they saw were the same parental understanding of district and school policy, and then the policy as well. In terms of action items, what Irving would like to do, potentially, although this might change for next year, for this coming year, is form a subcommittee of SLT to work with the municipality about attendance issues and consequences, implement attendance incentives for parents and caregivers, because that's the issue. You can't incentivize the students because they don't walk themselves. So maybe incentivizing the parents to get their children to school and get their children to school on time, have more structured and regular parent meetings about attendance as students accrue more. And that was what Irving put together. So a look ahead, our recommendations. So a couple of the things that the leadership wanted me to share and communicate that we think is really, really important, especially from a board's perspective. Like I said, the corrective action plan isn't anything that needs approval. It was something that we had to present. It stays on file. So when QSAC comes, they're going to ask us for our report. We'll share it with them. And like I said, it's a continued work in progress. It will be continuing to be shared with you until we decrease our chronic absenteeism. But a couple things that particularly for the board to look ahead is recommendations to Regulation 5200. specifically on unexcused absences that count toward truancy or excused absences. In particular, it's section C. So we really unpacked that regulation. The regulation was last updated in 2019. It includes parent notices for up to 15 excused locally and then an additional 16 unexcused. So that's a lot. That's way beyond the 10%. That's why if you look back at each one, that's what the leadership team in conjunction with our school leadership team. So these are our staff that are creating these corrective action plan items. And their perception is that, okay, so 10%, 180 days, 10% is 18 days, right? So, but we have a policy that goes beyond that to say you can do additional ones and that's okay because it's excused because you're writing a note. So that's a lot more. So if we combine both of those, you're way beyond the chronic absenteeism. So that's what we're interested in, maybe particularly looking at that regulation. The state says 10%, and that includes both excused and unexcused, right? Because excused to them are just those particular ones that I outlined, right? Religious observance, Veterans Day, take your child to work day, college visits, right? Civic engagement for 6 through 12. So the state doesn't care if it's locally excused or unexcused, right? That's really more for the board to determine retention and movement from grade level to grade level. And then the recommendation is to follow the state guidelines and maybe tighten that up a little bit more would be great. In addition, recommendations on changes to regulation 5200, specifically on denial of course credit, in particular coming from the high school. This is section G of that same regulation. Under denial of credit, section G, part 2, the denial of credit is for unexcused absences. Students are permitted up to 15 parent notes for excused absences under section C, point 2. If you are denied credit only when you have reached 10% under unexcused absences, this in theory means that a student can accumulate 31 absences, 15 excused plus 16 unexcused, before being denied course credit. This is a significant portion of class time. Additionally, it builds a lack of really it should be inequity of parents or equity. It's really an equity issue for those that know to write a note or don't. That's one of the things that Dr. Donovan and the team at the high school came back and said. What they're actually finding in their attendance review board is that the parents that know about the regulation and know to write notes, write the notes. We have students that go through attendance review board that have the issues of their chronic absenteeism, but their parents don't know to write notes. So now we're telling them, write the notes so that they can kind of be waived from their obligation of any kind of credit recovery. And some of those parents are just really hard to communicate with. So now I have a student sitting in credit recovery and a student that doesn't because a parent knows to write the notes and does it. So it really does cause a little bit of an inequity. That's a concern for the high school staff. They wanted me to share that with y'all. Another recommendation is students have been denied credit at 10% of any absences instead of unexcused absences, with the exception of the state allowances. So it would be nice that it was denied credit at the 10% mark and not well above that at 31 absences. At the high school level, another issue that we want to do as a look ahead is taking a deep dive into alternate pathways to graduation. And I know that we reviewed that more updated policy and regulation that came out, which we're really excited for. And that's something that Dr. Donovan has a strong background in, is providing more alternate pathways to graduation, because some of our students are struggling to get to school. Some of them work, have to care for younger siblings and things like that. So we really want to explore alternate pathways to graduation, because maybe some of our students can take advantage of that. In addition, as well as the impact of teaching and learning, which is culture and climate. Some of the concerns we have is if a student can be absent and miss 31 classes, which is a significant amount, but they're still doing well, what does that say about the class, right? The idea really should be if you're missing all of that class, you shouldn't be doing very well. So we kind of want to look at that in terms of more of a teaching and learning lens, to really look at what kind of learning opportunities in the regulation as well. It does say that teachers are required to provide missed work. So are we then really providing hybrid courses? Because we're providing work through Google Classroom so they can make up the work, but they're just not doing the seat time. But they're still passing a class, but they're in credit recovery because they've missed 31 plus classes. So the high school gets a little bit more complicated because we're talking about really required time for graduation. There's very specific regulation and law around graduation requirements. It gets a little bit more nuanced at the high school. That's why we have a look ahead, not only about the policy and reg, or really more about the reg, but specifically at the high school, because it is very nuanced. Cool. Okay, I guess that's it then. All right, so that ends my presentation. So again, nothing for formal adoption, just a presentation of the work that the principals and their school leadership teams have done. And we'll report our updates, and then every year we do a corrective action plan until our numbers drop. So I will open up to the board for questions or comments.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. Two things. So one, I was surprised to see how much existing things were going on at each school, actually, to try to combat this as an issue. And so one thought I had was when you show the data about the reason by school, it might be useful to segment that by school, because one thing is the reasons for being absent might be very different by school. And so we want to make sure whatever we do introduce is really targeted for the root cause of the problem. And so when you showed the data, it was across all. So I was just curious if you looked at anything.
The parental survey data?
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you segmented it.
Yeah,
at all?
the new software we use is kind of a little clunky like that. We're still like learning how to use it. We can certainly work with the company to sort of unpack that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that might be useful, given all the work that's existing. If you can kind of be targeted with a specific root cause, the data might help you. The second thing is, it sounds like we're doing this until we get the numbers down below
Correct.
10%. I'm wondering if we have any internal goals at different timeframes so we can see and make sure we're tracking. I'd love to know that rather than, wait to the end of the year, or see if there's, we can see if we're on track or not. We might need to modify and use kind of a monitoring system.
Yeah, so we do, and those are on the district's ESSA plans for their Title I funding. So if those are interested that are attending Ms. Rodriguez's committee meetings, she can definitely present that information there. Those are the targeted SMART goals. Yes.
I had a couple questions. Do we have a sense for how much the credit recovery program is kind of bringing students back in, or like how many students? I'm just wondering the impact, like in terms of this chronic absenteeism and whatnot.
So, well, the student accountability time is more like once they lose. So there's two things. You have students that are losing credit because they're failing. But then there's the credit recovery for like they passed, but they don't have enough seat time. So those that are not getting enough seat time are then just making it up in the SAT time.
Right. And are we capturing like a good portion of the students? Like, is that like meeting?
Yeah, so they're finding really good success with the student accountability time of trying to target them to say, if you've that you have to make up that time. The SAT time has been, from what I have, pretty good. The students don't want to stay and make up the time, so they, that's been a little bit more helpful. I think that's why the middle school wanted to try it as well. Versus the credit recovery program that provides a little bit more like reflective, alternative pathways to meet course requirements.
Okay. The other thing I noticed in the high school plan, and it was talking about different community resources and community organizations. And I don't think I might have seen it in one of the other schools, but I don't think I saw it in one of the other schools. And
Okay.
that I may have also been looking at a couple papers and recommendations from research base, which is really thin on this, but that was actually one of the recommendations, was to get kind of community partners on board with this. And I was just thinking about, community centers, churches, and having that message. But I was also thinking about, because transportation, to some degree is out of our hands, but some of those community organizations can manage some of that sometimes. And if they can be strategic in pairing parents or even childcare issues, that might be something that we can't manage, but they can manage in ways. So we try that. Our issue that we have is that we can recommend to a family, reach out to, to this resource.
for example, I know Seth has been really helpful to us at the Reformed Church, so we'll say reach out, but we can't give that information to Seth. So we can't tell someone like Seth, hey, this family needs help with transportation because that's confidential student information, but we can tell the family, hey, if you need some support, reach out to these people, but then it's really on them to do that.
I guess I was thinking about something a little different, which was reaching out to those community organizations and saying, we're having chronic absenteeism. If you have members with children, you could plan transportation for them, right? Like,
Oh, to say like ask the church to plan transportation
right?
for
Because we're not gonna be
members
able
of
to,
the
like
church.
you said, we can't talk about individual
Right,
families, but we can talk to those organizations and saying, this is something that's really impacting student success in schools. And we could really use your help in like partnering around these kind of things, right? So less individual kind of targeted family and more like, I don't know, I mean, I'm also thinking that I think the other piece that was really consistent through here was, finding teachers, finding counselors who can develop like personal relationships, which I think is really important because if they have good relations with the parents and students, that changes things. But there's also a big load on people, given how many students are absentee. So I think that's important. But I think also we can hopefully leverage some of those relationships outside of our schools that we think are really important. And some of these families might be participating in and just kind of let them know. And if they hear something, they could feed things back to us like, well, they're saying there is no coordinated transportation.
Right.
So we're going to do something, or, I don't know. I mean, they might have ideas too about what we could do.
Piggyback. To piggyback off of what Dan said, the community organizations that we have here also can help with incentivizing attendance. So we have a lot of students that go to, well, what used to be the cave, which I don't know if there's going to be a cave next year. We also have Zone 6, right? So having those community organizations on board to say, hey, we're, working on attendance plans with some of your students. Can you, talk to your students about the importance and kind of run an attendance incentive sort of plan? Now, I do think it is, once you get into like more specific case management where you're kind of looking for those wraparound opportunities, I do think there is some sort of like information sharing that can happen if the parents allow it. So I'm wondering if like that's, we could potentially ask permission to share, or I don't know, like there has to be some way that we can refer families.
I mean, we do now for things like Perform Care. So we'll say, do you want the information for Perform Care? And then we give them the information. We don't call Perform Care. The only time we could do those things is if parents release, and there's a release of records form that they could fill out that allows us that ability.
Okay, so like broaching that record release form would be good.
Yeah.
The other comments that I had in full transparency, I've been working on CAP now for like 6 weeks for the state. So I'm like, just
You're really in
it. Chronic absenteeism. And to say that, one, I was able to provide Christina some feedback prior to today, which was really about integrating parent feedback into the strategies. And then, but also like this is a big statewide push. The state is going to be rolling out support through PDs and cohorts and things like that. So there's going to be a lot more focus on this moving forward. But in regard to the parent aspect, there's like that 1 degree where we had parent surveys. And I think, speaking to what Sarah was saying, where you have the survey data, it might differ from each school, but the way that we can really dive deep into that qualitative data is through personal interviews or focus groups or things like that, where maybe we, what reads as transportation on paper may come back as something as quick as like making a phone call to a bus company, right? But we don't know that until we dive deeper into it. So having more opportunities for parent voice aside from the survey to kind of really dig in, and even having parents on the team or having students on the team could be, helpful to kind of thinking outside the box or addressing some issues that maybe, you didn't really entertain before. And then finally, I wanted to just comment, when I first saw the presentation, I was excited because it looked like Bartle's data is getting better, but there's also that time in the morning, right? Where there's like iffy time, like a gray area. So I don't know how true that data is if we are allowing buffer time.
Yeah.
So I would encourage taking more, like understanding that you do need a buffer. If we need a buffer in order to improve our attendance rates, then we have a problem.
Right.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So that's just something that I wanted to
Well,
bring to our
I will say
attention.
Bartle's, that reflects their biggest issue now is tardies. So before, their chronic absenteeism came from actual attendance, like missing the days. And they've really worked through their incentives to get that in a better place. So that's been really good. It's just now the tardies, because again, 3 tardies equals 1
Yeah,
absence.
okay, so I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So it's kind of shifted from
Shifted.
full days absent to now
Correct.
I'm coming late, and those absences
Yeah.
are.
So even Brooke said, Brooke's like, I'm really excited. Like, we're excited that the students are coming, and we don't want to, make light of that, because that's a really big accomplishment that they're coming. But now they're coming late, which is great because they're coming. But now 3 of those equals one absence. So that's where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So they get it real close.
The policy stuff should be something that we can easily do as a board, right? I mean,
Correct.
that, I know we've talked about it in the past, that all that sounds really familiar so, I mean, I think if you would bring that back to committee with a proposal, the wording that the schools are recommending, I think we could easily, within a month or 2 of committees, bring that up for first read. I can't imagine that there's many board members that would oppose tightening this up so it matches more of the state. Whether that will help our problem, I don't know if it will, but at the very least, we
Right.
could do that for them.
Well,
for
I
the
think
schools.
part of it is, you're right. Is it going to be the fix-all? No, but I think it will definitely help put everybody on the same page, because I think we've had these conversations over and over where people are like, oh, but it's excused, so it doesn't count. But it does, right? And
Right.
so whatever the language is, if it's the number or the wording, I think the whole thing is, I know I've said this before, but for parents thinking about the 18 days, that 10% are your PTO, right? Your children get 18 PTO days, right? The paid time off, right? They get those days off. How they use them, whether they're sick, their vacation, had a bad day, whatever it is, that's their time off, right? And once they exceed that, now we're chronically absent. So I think, it doesn't matter whether it's excused or unexcused. And I think there's been, at least since my understanding of, the regulation dating back to predates me, 2019, I believe, 2019, it's been like, well, because it's excused locally, it doesn't matter. And it does matter, and it does count. And I don't know how else to convey that. I appreciate that there's a larger than normal audience today, and I'm not sure how many people are online to hear it, but again, the more that we can communicate and share this out, and I think that is one push in the right direction, because as you can see, there's a lot of great things happening at the building level that they wanted to convey, and there's probably even more that we couldn't get down. We were on a tight crunch. The state didn't give us much turnover for doing this, especially for entering a CUSAC year. So there's a lot of great things happening there, but we need to work in tandem together to do this. And as you can see, there's more that they want to do.
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
that's just 2 letters. Parents should be right. Shouldn't have a. Right.
I just wanted to bring up something I saw. I was a little flummoxed by in the Irving under current tiered strategies, letters home and Genesis meeting with the principal. We need consequences for excessive lates and absences. What on earth would consequences in kindergarten and first grade be?
Yeah, so in all transparency, when I opened up to put my presentation together, Irving's was not fully done. And I think that was the transition of our previous principal leaving things not quite finished. So Dr. Robinson and I put some things together. So in full transparency, like I said, I believe under new leadership that we'll probably morph and change a little bit. So, I'm excited for that. So in full transparency, Irving's was something that we had to kind of piecemeal together.
And similarly, for the middle school, there is a lot of talk about consequences for excessive tardies, which
Yes.
Is not really something that we saw in Bartle or the high school,
Yeah.
which I thought was in the middle school has has a problem that has not been improving. And some of the other schools, it really has shifted or has gotten better, and the middle school hasn't. And it seems like there's this idea there that it should be consequences, and I'm just not, is there any evidence that moving in a punitive direction is the way to go?
Yeah, I'm not really sure they're thinking consequences like it's not like a detentions or things like that. I think what they are thinking of consequences is that at the high school there's a consequence because if you were not there, you lose credit, right? There's a graduation requirement. That's the consequence at the high school when you hit those numbers. At middle school, there isn't. So we could have students miss 30 math classes, over 30 ELA classes, right? And there's sort of no consequence for that because they get promoted to the next grade, which they should. Middle school students should not be held back. It is not a good social place for them to do that. So they move along, but yet there's a gap in their learning. And the middle school and Upper Bartle has been an area of big concern for our achievement gap. So the consequence isn't that it's like punitive so much in the way of like, I'm going to give them detention. They're not coming. So detention isn't going to mean anything, right? It's about the idea that there's no, like they get a grade and they move on. Like there's no carrot there or incentive because middle school, from the state perspective, it's not there's no graduation requirement, right? There's no graduation requirement for middle school to move on to the high school. You're promoted, right? So that's, I think, what the state is trying to say. That local control comes on. You deem when students are promoted and how they're promoted. What does that mean to move on to the next grade level? What does it mean to be promoted? What does it mean to be retained? Is there a certain amount, right, of how that works? So that's what they mean by consequence. So maybe the term isn't exactly being utilized in a way that conveys that. But what I'm excited about is that the middle school really saw the high school some great success they're having, and to try to do that work. I spoke to Dr. Donovan, who's done a lot of this work with the American Pediatrics Association. So she's done a lot of work with chronic absenteeism with that organization. So she's going to work with the middle school, particularly to turnkey some of her resources and work with that. So we're hoping that because the middle school is seeing some of that success, but there's no, if they aren't here, they're not here. And then even if they pass or fail a grade or a class, they still move on, right? So I could be in 6th grade, be chronically absent. I could fail math and I'm still going to 7th grade. So that's, I think, what they mean by consequence, if that makes sense.
So just to follow from that, it sounds what you're identifying is they're missing a lot of learning.
Correct.
And that's a problem.
Yes.
And so what I'm hearing when I hear consequences is that they would maybe do additional work or something. Like that's what I'm hearing.
Right. Something like so at the high school, again, they have SAT, which is student accountability time. And then they also have a credit recovery program where depending on if they pass or not pass the class, there are requirements around that. For some of our students who don't pass, they have to retake the class because it's a graduation requirement. Middle school, we don't have that. They were working on, they had a WISE connection. So that was, I believe, Sarah, you reported that out under curriculum instruction the 1 month about a title funded program, WISE connection after school, to really try to connect with adults and culture and climate. But again, you have to be here and opt in to, we call everybody, but not everybody wants to participate in that program.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, yeah, that was something that popped out to me a lot from the feedback. And what are the consequences? And I guess in high school, after you miss 31, or you possibly have 31 absences, excused and unexcused, the consequence that kicks in is you don't get credit for those classes. And okay, so one question I have is like, okay, well, if we decided we don't want students to be missing, 31 days and we tighten that to the state level, which is 10%, it probably shouldn't be we tighten the belt all at once because then we'll have a whole lot of students out of compliance because the culture's not there yet. So I think one question we have to think about in committee as we're looking at that regulation is, how do we sort of gradually ratchet up the expectation as opposed to going from 0 to 60 or 31 to 10. But I agree, we should get it down to where the state's own regulation is. And then the middle school, yeah, I think the question I had, like, what is the consequence? I mean, what is the consequence? If you're getting passed up, and I understand there are social reasons for that to happen, well, then you hit high school and you've, not really done a lot of the work in middle school and it worked for you, and then you're in high school. Now suddenly the expectation is much higher, but you're not academically ready to meet that expectation. So we're not serving the students very well. We are serving them in some way, we're keeping them with their cohort, but not in other ways, because those are the kids who really struggle in high school. They never had to sort of, do uncomfortable stuff to get to school on time, except for 10% of the days. So I think should we have stiffer consequences? And if so, what they should be? I remember I was on the board, but I was in the audience when the board, I think, changed the regulation. So previously, this was 3 or 4 years ago, you couldn't attend senior prom or something if you hadn't graduated, if you hadn't like passed all your classes or something along these lines. Anyway, and everyone sort of said that's unfair. It's really, really awful for the students. They miss a big milestone. And okay, you can pat yourselves on the back and say that's true. But should we look at participation in extracurriculars, in athletics, right? What are the things students really look forward to? And say, okay, you want that thing that's really awesome, that you really enjoy, and you sort of, you go to school for, okay, you have to do the thing that maybe isn't as fun, which is getting to school on time. Maybe we should look at that as well. Maybe we're being asked in the feedback to look at that.
Just want to piggyback off of what Allison had noticed with the Bartle. With that buffer system, we don't really have real numbers there on how many absences there actually would be if we were actually looking at the tardies, if we were going by the start time. So there possibly could be more absences technically because there are more latenesses. And the fact that we do need a buffer is indicative that maybe it could be time to rethink the Bartle start time as well to help these kids out to get to class on time.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to enter the first public comment period of this meeting. Just so everybody understands, we will have 2 public comment sections, one now and then one after board committee reports and recommendations. So the Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policy 0167 establishes and regulates the right of the public to participate in public meetings. So we will, if there's anyone here in person who would like to speak, you can go first, and then we'll move to anyone online. And please just give your name, and if you are an address. However, if you're a student, do not give your address.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph. You guys might have remembered me from a few previous meetings. I'd just like to give some of my opinions on attendance. I know I'm in an A period class in the high school, which means I have to get up earlier than a lot of the rest of my peers. And it's a bit difficult sometimes, I think. We as high school students, we have a lot of different responsibilities. We're not very good at managing our time. That's kind of a skill that we kind of learned through high school. So sometimes it's kind of difficult to have, say, like a set bedtime that's early, and it's also a bit difficult to have a set wake up time to always be on time at school. So I think if something I think that might be work is having a bit of a later starting time and a bit of a later ending time. I don't know if that's possible, but I think when I think about the biggest reason that I'm late to school, it's always because it's kind of just difficult to wake up and then get to school on time every single day. So I think if a later starting time could be implemented, it could definitely be beneficial to getting students to school on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Is there anyone else here in person who would like to speak? Okay, do we have anyone online? Okay, is there anyone online who would like to speak? Okay.
Hi, this is Abby Stern Cardinal. I live on Harper Street. Two quick things related to the absenteeism and just arriving on time. One was I was a little confused by the percentages in the parent survey because I don't know if there were duplications, but it added it up to over 100. So I was just confused on the demographics there. The second thing I wanted to mention that I talked a little bit about at one of the parent I forget what they're called, but at Bartle, um, that could help with kids getting to school would be some setting up some walking school buses. And, you know, it is walkable, but it can be hard. Not all parents can walk their kids to school. There are people who walk their kids to school anyway, and having connecting families together, especially at the younger years, it might be harder as they get older. They have their own, you know, friend groups and they're more able to walk themselves. Um, but I see a lot of people helping each other with transportation in the morning. But if you don't know, you know, if you don't know the people, maybe there could be some organized walking school buses, or at least trying that out when the weather is nice. So I just wanted to make that suggestion.
Thank you, Abby. Who's next?
Can you hear me? I'm Anna Haley. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. So I live on 32 Lincoln Avenue. I've had two kids that have graduated from the Highland Park schools, one in 2019, one in 2022. I really appreciate several of the board members trying to gently unpack this, but I have a few questions. The first is I'm wondering to what extent any of these data or the what seems like kind of generally proposed solutions are at all different from what was done when my kids were at school. That would be my first question. The second, I guess, is more of a comment that I am admittedly really struck by the what feels like a very quick and thorough focus on disciplining the students and trying to seek an individual level explanation for tardiness and absenteeism, as opposed to, and some of the school board members absolutely raised the following: what else is going on that is preventing kids from being there? What is it about the fact that the district is not able to provide transportation to all but special ed and other kids? What is it about parents' work schedules? What is it about students not wanting to be at school? What are the other structural, institutional, climate, environmental factors that may be getting in the way? What do the students say? And what do more than 59 parents say? I feel like I'm really, I haven't been to a school board meeting in years. My older kid was a school board rep for several years before they graduated from the high school. And I'm just really struck by the lack of, in response to this presentation, board members saying, wow, we are just hitting the tip of the iceberg and we need to collect a whole new round of data, talking to our students, the ones who are absent, the ones who are tardy, the ones who aren't, all of their parents, about what is going on here. and to attempt, if at all possible, to resist a lowest common denominator focus on let's discipline the kids and help them understand the importance of going to school. Maybe there's something that they know that we don't. We really need to know what that is. Thank you.
And do we have anyone else?
Hello?
Rob, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Hello, I'm Robert Scott. I live at 25 South Second Avenue. And first, I just wanted to welcome, I guess it's Mr. Grossman, our new principal, to Highland Park. Um, and I just wanted to say I've lived here 19 years. I had 3 kids graduate from our schools. They had lots of good experiences and some mid ones. Irving has always been a wonderful place. I remember when Nancy Romano was principal when we started. When we moved here, my neighbor said to me, New Jersey's a diverse place, and Highland Park's one of the most diverse places in New Jersey, and it's a wonderful town. And that is true. And so I just wanted to say, welcome. And I know that the parents of Irving and the folks in this town are anxious to hear about your vision for our youngest students and creating opportunity for them. And I know that everyone's going to want to work with you. And then I guess I just wanted to uh, follow up with some of what's already been said here about the issue with absenteeism. It really is the case that, as Joseph Lou said, A period is a problem in the high school. You have to get there earlier. If you're in band, you're late. You're tardy. 3 tardies is an absence. I think all 3 of my kids ended up in some form of attendance jail, credit recovery, attendance review board, detention. I don't think it was called student accountability time then, and that was because they were band kids. And it's just harder to get to band on time. So that's something that people pointed out over and over again. And I'm also glad to hear talk about rethinking that insanely early Bartle start time. I know many of us pointed out that this was going to be one of the consequences of that early start time. And finally, again, this is a supportive community, and I think we can do a lot better than punitive consequences when people miss school because of sleep, early start times, anxiety, illness, um, and the sorts of things that just happen to everyone that sometimes make school impossible. So I hope we will steer a course clear of the punitive consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Is there anyone else with a hand raised? Okay, well, in that case, we will close the first public comment section of the evening and move on to board committee reports and recommendations.
Curriculum instruction did not meet this month due to different schedule issues. We will be meeting next month. So I'll just go over the items we have to vote on. We have approval of field trip requests, a couple of field trips for robotics, a couple for nutrition science to the farmers market and Superfresh. We have approval of curriculum textbooks and mandated programs for across pre-K 12. That includes gifted and talented, guidance and counseling, substance abuse, and all textbooks and instructional materials. We have approval of a job description for a substitute secretary, approval of university graduates for student teaching and internships, approval of the high school and middle school athletics emergency action plan, and then the approval of the action plan related to heat-related illness and sudden cardiac arrest. We have approval of Schedule B interscholastic athletic schedules for the middle school and the high school, and that is it. I don't know if there's any questions.
there's equity and excellence did not meet, and we have no agenda items. So, Allison?
Yes, finance and facility did meet. We met on July 14th. The first thing we discussed was the preliminary transfer and treasurer reports. We also discussed the approval of IDEA and ESEA grant allocations. So overall, there was an increase in IDEA and ESEA allocations, including about a $14,000 increase in IDEA basic funds and about a $400 increase, a little bit more, in pre-K funds. And ESSA increased overall, except for a loss of Title III immigrant funding, and that is due to a decrease in the numbers of students enrolled. So we had, I think, about how many more last year? I think it was like 10 more last year than we have this year. We also discussed the approval for athletic transportation. There was one bidder for the athletic transportation, which was ABC Transportation, and the rates are similar to last year's rates. There is a small weekend and holiday hourly increase of about $5. There were two change orders for the structural repair coming in at around $9,000. There was additional change order for cafeteria alterations for the pre-K classroom. They needed another quad receptacle, and that was about $1,400. We also, on the agenda tonight, is the approval of the district-wide asbestos removal quotation. District removal bid. We were quoted about $25,650 for that. This is required under AHERA, which stands for, hold on, I looked it up, Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act. And basically every year someone comes and reviews and says, oh, you need to fix that tile or you need to address that paint over there. So this is going to be a district-wide move to address and abate the asbestos. This has already been budgeted before. Mr. Flanagan knew that this would be coming, so this is not anything unexpected. And we also have the approval for the renewed application for the multiple temporary instructional spaces for next school year. Those are the modular classrooms at Irving's. This is not the lease. This approval is something that we have to submit to the county to have these modulars as spaces. The actual lease is up next September, up for renewal. So we will begin discussing kind of whether or not we would need to renew those modulars moving forward. We already have the, what's it called? The not the long range plan. I have it here. Strategic assessment plan. Okay, that is the master plan. Thank you. I'm like, what is the master plan? Oh, it's right there in my notes from Speitzel. They are working on that already. So hopefully by next budget season, we'll have a good idea of how we could perhaps restructure some spaces in order to maybe not have to have the modular classrooms and still address the universe that we have. Okay, we also, oh, that's not it. Discussed Hungry Minds. So Hungry Minds is a nonprofit that assists school districts with lunch debt payment. And so we have to thank Miss Baldizone and Mr. Rosa because they worked, Miss Baldizone let Mr. Rosa know about this program. And we had several graduates who could not receive diplomas due to unpaid lunch balances. And Mr. Rosa got in touch with Hungry Minds, and Hungry Minds contributed $4,800 to help reduce those fines. There will be other opportunities to continue working with Hungry Minds. So Mr. Rosa is kind of like trying to figure that out. We might maybe try a fundraiser with some matching from Hungry Minds. So all of that is still up for discussion. But it's really wonderful to know that we now have established this relationship, and hopefully we can address some of the lunch debt. The structural repair at Bartle is nearing completion. The fence was partially installed and they're waiting for approval on the fireproofing. The pre-K classroom renovation bid is progressing. I'm sorry, the renovation is progressing. The floor is leveled, tile is ordered. Lighting and ductwork are all done. They're waiting for an AC condenser, paint, and more bathroom construction to be done, and the target completion date is early August. It must be completed as per the grant by August 31st. We're also waiting for some updated quotes on that HPEF environmental sustainability project, so that's still a work in progress. That's the Kushner grant money that we were rethinking for the middle and high school to use for sustainability and centers. And then we have an update on the geothermal link at Irving. This is repaired. This was a job that was originally quoted, get this, for $95,000. John or Mr. Flanagan worked with the folks who helped with the baseball field to dig and find the leak. And fortunately, it was located next to two modulars and next to a modular and could be repaired. And the contractor of the modulars reimbursed some from the bill because it probably happened while they were installing that. And so the final cost was $4,800. So a very special thank you to Mr. Flanagan and the folks who helped us with the baseball field. At the time of our meeting, the statewide audit, your audit, regular district audit was happening. So we will update at the next audit presentation. Which I know is everybody's favorite. The student activities is being transitioned to SchoolFi accounting system, so everything will be in one place. Previously, this information lived in three district QuickBooks, three different QuickBooks. So someone at high school was using one and someone at Bartle was using another. So now this is going to be streamlined in SchoolFi and everything's going to be organized from the business office, and Mr. Rose is very happy about that. Coming up in August, we will be doing a deeper dive into the athletics budget in order to more thoroughly examine the impact of the assistant director position on the budget, both district and as district budget and the athletic director budget. I'm sorry, athletics department budget. Okay, now for agenda items. Where am I? Oh, Lord. Here we are. Okay. 1 is the approval of the supplemental bill list. 2 is the bill list. 3 is the treasurer's report. 4 is the board secretary's report. 5 of the Board of Education certifications. 6 is the approval of budget transfers. 7 is the approval of travel and related expense reimbursements. 8 is the approval of contracted service providers and related services, and this is to HUDL for athletic supplies. 9 is for the approval of contracts for professional development. We have All In for Inclusive Education, Handled with Care, Right to Know or Hazard Communication Training, Use Science for college and career readiness, development for administrators on the evaluation process, Linkit training. There's 2 non-public transfers for professional development. No, actually 3. And that's the end of that. Number 10 is the approval for McKinney-Vento students to attend Edison Board of Education. And then 11 is for McKinney-Vento students to attend South Brunswick Board of Education. Then we have the approval for the membership for the New Jersey State Interscholastic Athletic Association in the amount of $2,500. We have the approval of the renewal application for the temporary instructional spaces, aka the modulars. We have number 14 is the approval of submission of the IDEA grant application for next year. Number 15 is the approval of the submission for the ESEA grant application. Number 16 is approval to change to a change order that was for the pre-K classroom. Number 17 is the asbestos abatement. Number 18 are change orders for the structural repair. Number 9 is the approval of number 19 is the approval of the conditional gift agreement for the renovation of the high school baseball field. Thank you so much, athletic boosters. Number 20 is the approval of non-public allocations. This is something that we have to do as a pass-through. And so there you'll see the 3 schools listed and their allocations for nursing, security, technology, and textbook. We have the approval of a settlement agreement. We have the approval for the transportation, the athletics transportation from ABC Transportation. Number 23 is the appointment of outside counsel for investigation. Whereas the board has received a complaint requiring investigation by outside counsel, and whereas the firm of Hatfield Schwartz Law Group LLC has substantial experience in conducting such investigations, and whereas the board has reviewed the matter and determined that engaging outside counsel is both necessary and appropriate, now therefore be it resolved that the board approve the engagement with Hatfield Schwartz Law Group solely for the purpose of conducting this investigation at the rates set forth in the proposed legal services agreement. Number 24 is the approval of the revised prescription plans for, this is changed, so I'm going to read in the change. So this is the approval for the revised prescription plans for the month of July and August. I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to, as advised by its group insurance broker of record, Brown & Brown Metro, to maintain prescription coverage with Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield for weight loss anti-obesity medications July 1st through August 31st, 2027, due to the delayed implementation of the RX Save card until September 1st, 2026.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
There's a typo, right?
It should be just for July 1st, 2026 through
July,
August
yeah.
31st,
All right.
2020.
That was, I caught it too. 2026. So sorry, the extension for HB Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield will be through August 31st of this year, because the RX Safe Card plan, which is what we entered into for prescription coverage for weight loss and anti-obesity medications, is delayed. So at the rates, benefits, terms, and conditions represented in the Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield initial renewal proposal. That is all I have. Any questions?
The conditional gift agreement for the baseball field. I'm just always struck when I walk by that area of the back of the high school, middle school, that it's just closed off and used to be open. I understand, it's important not to let people run around, too many people run around, with their dogs and boots and whatnot. But I'd just be curious to know if it was part of the agreement that the giver of the gift said, I'll donate this money if it be closed off and protected, or if that was independently determined by the school district and the athletics department, this is actually the best thing for the field.
I do not have the answer to that question, but I will follow up and find out.
I think there is, I don't know if this is the same issue, but this is something I think we discussed in central leadership team around people passing through during the day. So I don't think it's necessarily the same issue, but I think it is community members thinking it's okay, like during the day, during school hours, to actually pass through the high school and middle school.
What, they're two separate things. So
Right, but I'm wondering how
the item on the agenda here is for the amount left over from the Kushner grant. So the HP boosters applied for the Ida Kushner grant. They received that grant to renovate the baseball field, and any of the renovations that you see on that baseball field, the new fencing, the beautiful grass, the beautiful dugouts, and all of that came specifically from that grant. So they were very deliberate on exactly what they wanted, and we worked really closely with the members of the booster clubs to put into place exactly what they wanted. because that was the condition for using that money. What you see on here is the leftover of that funds. If you remember a couple of meetings ago, we approved for the landscaping to make that area to try to hide the garbage bins so that actually walking out to the baseball field area was a little bit nicer. So we took down the tree, we blocked out the cans so that it was like a nicer entrance, and then the sign up for the Ida Kushner baseball field. The money here is for that leftover money of that grant to be able to help sustain the field. So that's sort of independent of that. So that's, I believe that's what you're talking about, right? Yes, okay, yes, yeah.
Okay, in that case, I'll move on to personnel. On the agenda, we're going to have an approval of amending a parental leave, approval of appointments, which includes some paraprofessionals at Irving and Bartle, a kindergarten teacher at Irving, a special education teacher at Bartle, or couple, or no, and a long-term substitute, a new nurse for the high school, and Dr. Grossman as the Irving Primary School principal. We also have a Schedule B position, Rebecca Takas as robotics at the middle school. We also have a number of hourly positions having event monitors, Genesis training, responsive classroom, closet organization, audio visual, counselors, pre-K teacher and intervention specialists, instructional coaches. We also have a number of volunteers. Thank you very much for volunteering to help out with various sports team, including the girls varsity basketball team, the middle school wrestling, middle school boys soccer, and high school boys basketball. Thank you so much for volunteering your time. We also have approvals of transfers and promotions having to do with paraprofessionals moving buildings. And we also have approval for extra compensations for paraprofessionals for next year, and approval of toileting stipends for paraprofessionals. For policy and regulations, we have one policy and regulation for first reading, which is the updated use of internet-enabled devices, which is an update to align the high school's policy with state law. Highland Park passed our cell phone ban before there was state guidance on how to do so. And so we need to update our only the high school's regulation in order to fit with the state regulations, and we can discuss that. And then we also have a number of policies and regulations for second reading, including notice of board meetings, legal notices, superintendent's duties, family leave, curriculum content, equity in school classroom practices, guidance counseling, non-resident student choice school district, high school graduation, high school diplomas, use of physical restraint and seclusion techniques for students with disabilities, reimbursement of federal and other grant expenditures, federal awards, funds, internal controls, mandatory disclosures, contracts for goods or services funded by federal grants, procurement procedures for school nutrition programs, non-resident students choice school district, federal award funds, internal controls, allowability of costs. And that is the policies and regulation. Any discussion there? This is the.
Oh, yeah. So I just wanted to talk briefly about, thank you, Ms. Bardman, for bringing that up specifically about the electronic use of devices, specifically for the high school. So just to let everybody know, just in case they didn't read all the attachments, we will align with the state's law now that says that high school students are not allowed to have them anytime during instructional or non-instructional time. But they did put out a caveat for those districts that have open lunch, that students are allowed to have them during that period. So we've been sort of going back and forth a lot on what this looks like. I think what we settled is that the same rules will apply for students that they currently have, in which students are supposed to keep them in their backpacks or bags or purses or whatever else they have, pockets, whatever they have. They're just not allowed to be used now in the hallways. They're not allowed to be used during study hall. They're not allowed to be used at all. Because we felt that open lunch would still be something that we felt the community might still want their children to have access to. That's why we're not locking them up. But we had considered doing the same thing where the middle school had, which is like locking them up for the day. But it would be too cumbersome for potentially 3 grade levels that have access for open lunch to unlock them, get them, go to lunch, then come back, lock them up, and put them back. It would just be too much people power to be able to navigate that. So we're going to try it with Dr. Donovan feels that some very more strict rules around, you know, making sure that students are accountable for keeping them on them and not using them. She put out a communication. So because it's there's legislation around that now. There, just like there is legislation around not smoking in school, not vaping, drug use, things like that. That's contraband. So students' devices are now contraband because there's legislation around there. So there are definitely more strict consequences now that you'll see in the regulation. So in the past, it was the teacher would take it and that would be sort of a first line of defense. Now, if they're seen with it, it goes right to the main office and parents have to come get it. So we're going to try that out and see how it goes. We're hoping that it'll be successful and that high school students will oblige and be able to follow that. If for some reason that doesn't happen and we have to about face, we'll make a recommendation for a regulation change where we will purchase lock devices and they won't be able to have them for open lunch. But we want to honor that because we think it's important. But we're hopeful. One of the things that central leadership team did discuss a lot was that we didn't want the board specifically said was they didn't want the onus to be on the teachers to have to manage it and regulate it. So we're hoping that the students can do a good job of doing that themselves. And staff just basically, it's like the same thing, like that's why we're treating it as contraband. If there's vaping or things like that, the staff, they don't deal with any of those consequences. They're sent to the main office and the main office deals with it through the assistant principal or principal. So that's sort of how we're treating it in hopes that that will work. If the data is suggesting and we get feedback from central leadership team from the high school that it might not be working, then we may have to adjust the regulation to include open lunch. We just wanted to try it out this way first.
I just want to clarify. My understanding was that the current policy in the middle school that they turn their cell phones in if they bring them to school in homeroom. They don't have them the rest of the day, bell to bell. They pick them up in homeroom on the way out.
Yes.
I thought that in high school they have like little boxes in each classroom. If they have a cell phone, when they enter the classroom, they drop the cell phone in the box and they pick it up on the way out. That's still what's going to be in the policy, right?
So the high school used to have the shoe racks on the those little shoe racks. They used to have them, but when we updated all of that, we sent some of those shoe racks down to Bartle to be able to be used because Bartle wasn't going to lock them up because they didn't really feel like it was a problem. It's been like one-off. So we've had sort of those collection devices for the high school. I don't think the high school are using them anymore. I could check with Dr. Donovan. There's been a lot of, it's really just been on the students to keep them. If I've been in the high school, the students have had it on them. They keep them in their backpacks, which is that's what they were currently doing this past year.
That's not the regulation I thought the board voted on, that they're supposed to be in boxes in the classrooms when they're in high school. I think that's.
No.
I think we've done.
No.
That's any policy that we've
No.
done. For the high school. No.
And the reason we're not having students put their cell phones away in homeroom in high school is so they can talk on their phones at lunchtime?
So that they have access to them. They have access to them at lunchtime because we have open campus lunch. They leave campus during lunch. So we felt that, parents and guardians and caregivers might, if a kid is leaving if they're leaving the property for lunch, they're off property, they're outside of our control. And so we just felt that parents might want to be able to ensure that they're safe, or that, right? Because if not, then they're leaving lunch without that, theoretically. So, I mean, again, if we don't get much pushback and parents would support that, I mean, we can certainly do that. The issue is we can't collect them in the morning, give them back at the beginning of lunch, send them out for lunch with them, and then come back and collect them back for the rest of the day, and then give them back at the end of the day. That's just the sheer amount. I mean, we have 3 grade levels that theoretically can go out for open lunch, and it would just, the people power, we just don't have that people power to be able to staff that, to be able to do it, because they all already have to sign out, right? So like there's a sign out that they have to do and a sign back in. So to have an additional step to that. So either it's they come in and they do a homeroom. So Dr. Donovan's ready for that. She had a had a homeroom built into that. So an option can be that the kids come in, they have homeroom. They do with the middle school. They lock them up in the same little bins. So in their homeroom, there's a little cart. They open the cart, there's a bin, they drop their watches, their earbuds, their phones, they put that in there. It's locked by the homeroom teacher. And then at the end of the day, they go back to that homeroom teacher, they collect their stuff and go home. So that means open lunch, anytime during the day, they do not have access to their devices. Or it's that they hold on to them and they don't use them at all. Not during passing time, not during study hall, not during instructional, non-instructional, except when they leave campus to go for lunch.
And you really think in the bathrooms, in front of their lockers, they're not texting, they're not meeting, they're not calling their friends, they're not, surfing the internet.
Again,
The state law is really clear.
I completely agree with you. That's why I wanted to have the conversation. It's a first read, so we will have a second public comment. And my hope was that if there are public comments, or if people are watching this after the fact and want to email myself, email Dr. Donovan, or email the board with their suggestions. I mean, ultimately, again, if the board feels, again, I'm trying to lean on the team at the high school to give their recommendation, because they're the one that has to put the regulation into place. But I mean, if parents and guardians and caregivers are okay with us having them even for open lunch, we already budgeted for the device storage facilities, and Dr. Donovan is ready to go with a homeroom and a schedule that will work for this. What happened was at the last minute, when the state came out with the update, they then said, oh, we changed it. If your school district for high school allows open lunch, they can have it for lunch. Before, if you remember, the original rollout was all day doesn't matter. And then more recently, thank you to the state for doing this ahead of that, we have now 2 months before September 1 start, or thereafter, right? So they kind of did an abrupt change and said, if you want.
Is there do students register for open lunch at the start of the year? Their
Yeah,
parents, okay.
yeah, it's in Genesis.
So there can't be like a separate box in the office for open lunch kids? They can go and get their cell phone and bring it. I mean, it seems.
I mean, I don't have the office staff. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of kids that go out for open lunch. It's 3 grade levels. If there's, let's say if 75% of the grade goes out for lunch, 75 times 3, you're talking about 150, 200, 300 kids that are going out for lunch theoretically. Like that, I'm not sure that one secretary in the high school can manage that, nor is it in her job description to do that.
So I understand where Ethan's coming from on this one, because I do feel similarly. However, I'm also open to giving them a year of responsibility and see if we can do this. And if you don't, oh well. But I mean, I also understand the whole thing with open lunch. There's no such thing as payphones anymore. So if something does happen, they don't have a way of contacting anyone. Right. So that is a cause of concern for me, that I do want them to have access to it. However, I know high school kids. But I'm willing to see where this goes and let them know, like, you guys are the ones who are gonna, make the mark for the rest of the school.
You hear that, high school students? So that, again, part of the reason was I wanted to make sure we had an open dialogue, and then hear from the public as well for this on this sort of their opinions, so we know how to best guide this.
Yeah, Ethan's not the only person who thought they were being locked up during instruction, because I thought that, because that's actually what we talked about at the central leadership team. So I left there thinking that was how things were being implemented. So finding out the last year that wasn't implemented or they stopped using lockers is new information to me as well. I'm looking at the regulation and didn't mention it, but that was the strategy that I heard at Central Leadership Team that the high school wanted to do to take it out of teachers' hands. I don't think I still think it's in teachers' hands right now because you're asking the student to put it in their backpack, and the student is the one that disciplines other students. The teacher is, right? So the teacher's going to have to be the one that take it. So this does put it in teachers'
No,
hands.
the new updated regulation wouldn't. The teacher sends them right to the main office. And then the main office,
Right.
the principal or principal.
Right, the teacher sends him to the main.
I know.
It's
no,
it's
I
in the
know.
teacher's hands.
I
right?
know.
Like, they don't necessarily have to take it or discipline it
Right.
in the classroom, but they
Yeah.
do have to send them to the office, right? So
Yeah.
the teacher is policing that, and that was something that was really consistent on the central leadership team.
The
That
last-
want teachers
yeah.
to do that. Right?
Central
So-
leadership team that I went to, they actually had put this on pause because they were waiting for the new outcomes of the law. So they didn't want to have to buy all this stuff and find out they didn't need it. And I think that's
Right,
kind of
the
where
new
we are
law.
right now.
But for our policy last year, I'm talking like last time we were meeting last September and that kind of a thing, that was, or well, before that was the plan, right? So I understand they didn't want to commit until we heard the state policy this time, but that's everything I'd heard of in central leadership team before, and I haven't made all of them, but I've been pretty good. So yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting
Trial and
to
error.
hear how things, I guess, go this year, given we don't, I guess.
I mean, Dr. Donovan seems really confident that she can manage this, but
I feel like if you at least had the lockers in the classroom, you are addressing use during instruction and anybody leaving to go to the bathroom, texting, like meet me here, right? And then, you get them and you go to the next class. And, I know they're not supposed to be out in the hallway, but in terms of reducing access, I think lockers in the classroom, you drop it in the locker in the classroom, you pick it up when you leave, could work. I'm especially concerned for the freshmen who are now have had 1 year of, having their cell phones locked up, and maybe they'll be, the stars of the show, right? At following this, or maybe having access to their devices might be too tempting. I also I want kids to shape the policy, which obviously they can't because the state made one. But I want them to shape it as much as they can. So my concern is just in order to take it out of teachers' hands, you have to reduce the opportunity for them to get in a power struggle over this. And yeah, go to the main office. What if they're like, no? It's like the same, it's the same argument that you're going to have with any policy that's not reducing access from the moment they're in to when they leave.
Well, and I guess just another concern is I don't think that we've had a full accounting of how this first year policy has gone in the high school yet, or in the middle school. I mean, we had early data on the middle school, which showed, some dramatic improvements in discipline. And we haven't, and that's where we took the most dramatic action was in the middle school, and we saw the most dramatic results. And in the high school, I haven't seen any accounting of how the policy went this last year. And so then we're talking about a kind of minor change, which is we're doing the same thing we did this year, except now it's all referrals to the administration. But I don't know, we haven't had like a specific cell phone related discipline, tab in the high school discipline reports. We haven't needed it, and we haven't done it for the middle school. And I know there's cases where it has come up, but it's been pretty minor.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, because I wasn't able to attend the last central leadership team meeting, because I know every meeting they were trying to bring that data. Did you know if they brought that data I'm sorry, I don't have my notes, it's on my computer from Mr. Presti. I don't know if that data was there. I can find it. I know he sent a report out.
I mean, I wasn't at the last one, but there were ones before it, and they from my memory,
Yeah.
questionable. I think looked better, like across every school.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
So
much better.
but I didn't
I think
know.
the high school reported out positive things too.
Yeah.
except for maybe one
I
teacher.
think high school, but I assume there's other strategies being implemented. So
Yeah.
I mean, if they're managing it and it's not a major issue,
Yeah.
and so it might be good to specifically at the high school.
Yeah, I'll look back at my notes
data.
for that, see what
Maybe
Mr. Presti
they talk
reported.
about
Yeah.
the last CLT, but that would be informative. I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything on that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look back.
Anything of the outcome, but it was a lot of discussion on the guidelines and how we're going to implement that moving forward, not knowing what the guidelines were going to change to.
I don't understand what the difference is. Okay, so like students were never supposed to take out their cell phones in class and start texting people, right? So now we're saying, well, now you're really not supposed to do it. Keep it in your pocket. That's not a new regulation. That's just doubling down and saying don't use your cell phones. And Dan, thanks for the memory check. During our conversations in committee and curriculum and instruction didn't meet last month. If they had, we would have gone over this regulation. The policy in the high school was supposed to be boxes in the classrooms, drop the phone in the box, pick it up on the way out. Maybe, the leadership of the high school didn't see it that way. I'm sure there's an honest misunderstanding, but that's how it was communicated to me. So I think that we need to revisit this policy and write it in black and white, what we want the school's approach to cell phone should be.
No, I just one other thought, and this might be the worst thought ever, but I was just thinking about what Allison was saying, because if we're dealing with this policy specifically in response to open lunch, why would freshmen not have their phones locked up?
That might be because freshmen are also in a lot of other classes, right? So it's like it's not classroom based.
Yeah.
Because they might be taking AP Bio with a bunch of juniors and seniors, So yeah.
Much harder.
But
Have like just a regular homeroom system.
You have homerooms, but they're not every day. It's like twice a month, so that wouldn't work.
Yeah, and like I said, Dr. Donovan has a plan for changing the schedule to include a homeroom if that was the path that, we would want to go down.
So what makes sense at this point? Because we do need a policy for September.
Right.
Based on state law. So
my
what do we do?
recommendation is to go with what Dr. Donovan and her school leadership team recommends, which is what you see in front of you, with the idea of closely monitoring it. Maybe at our first central leadership team, we'll put that up as a specific agenda item in terms of the data. Have the high school team come with their data and then look at it to see. And that's what I told her. I said, let's monitor it. And if we see, if I walk through the halls and I see kids on their cell phones, I said, I'm not going to be a happy camper. I'm going to want them locked up. But again, I would like to hear also, how important is this open lunch? Open lunch.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the biggest concern is the open lunch. Like, do we want them to walk out without a phone?
The only thing is open lunch, right?
And if there were pay phones, then I'd say, yeah, take the phones. But there's no real way to contact anybody should anything happen. And that is really my only concern.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm also very much okay with
which is what the high school's concern is too, is open lunch, quite honestly. So, and closing lunch is another whole.
Yeah, but I also want to trust the judgment of the teachers that are actually in the school implementing it and knowing their students. So I don't want to,
Right, and again, the recommendation is coming from the school leadership team, so it's not being made in isolation, that the staff are making it collectively together. So again, my recommendation is to follow that and see where it lands, unless there's, if the community, we can start implementing if the community feels if it's not being successful, we want to go with the system, we have it ready to go. We can change the schedule, we can order the supplies and get it going and update the regulation, especially if there's not, if the community also agrees. as parents and caregivers of high school students that go out for open lunch, that we are going to have their devices, their watches, their phones, their meta glasses, anything that is of that electronic device
Yeah,
realm.
I have a quick, just clarifying
Your
question
bud.
too. Oh, a quick clarifying question, sorry. So, is the assumption, this all makes sense to me, in the conversation and seeing how it goes. Are we assuming that there is also the instantiation of the policy we thought that was happening, which is that they're being put in the black boxes? Because that was. So
I don't, what was supposed to have been this past year?
Is that, are we assuming that we're still putting the phones in the black boxes?
I'm
No, they never
confused.
were, they never happened. Okay.
Assuming that, because I don't think it happened. But
No.
I think there's actually three options, right?
Okay.
Not for this fall. I think for this fall, it's moving forward similar, but you're kind of painting it as we're either moving forward this fall or we're taking away for lunch, which the third option, which is actually use lockers during instruction, which is what a couple of us thought, right? So that's a third option.
Right, but again, that's right.
Depending on how things go.
So something like that, again, just being mindful of maybe not locking them up, but I mean, if there's bins that they could drop them in, but again, that's on the teacher now to collect them. And what if the kids don't put them in and they say, I don't have them, they're not searching
It's on
backpacks
the
or
teachers
anything.
now.
Right,
Right.
I want to,
But I think that would be actually be more systematizing it, right? Like you walk in, you drop them in here, right?
right, well, I mean, that was in the, so if you remember, though, I think the conversation was because in the past, the shoe holders were at the high school, but we had, by the way, our regulation before all of this came out was that they don't use them during instructional time. So predating this legislation, at the high school it was don't use them during instructional time. And we had those little shoe things for them. But it wasn't being used with fidelity, it wasn't being used constantly. Like some teachers were using them as their attendance, like drop your phone and stuff in there, and then that's the attendance. So they were using it all different ways in prior administration and with our prior policy. So regulation. So when we updated the regulation, we were more strict about it. We wrote it into observations, like when teachers were observed, we had to write formally in there if we saw cell phones or did not see cell phones. That was part of a teacher's observation. So we started becoming more more accountability for making sure that went into place this past year. And then we took some of those shoe things. That's what we talked about at Central Leadership. My recollection is to then bring them down to Bartle to use there. And for the most part, the high school was incredibly successful. I think there was some pockets of some issues, but that was swiftly addressed. And taken care of. So I think to me, it's either the students are holding on to it and not using it, and they have access during open lunch, or we switch to a homeroom model and they lock them up in the morning. They get them in the afternoon. We change the schedule a little bit because my concern is doing it every period is just going to take away from instructional time, especially if we have larger size classes. So they have to come in because, by the way, not all the kids come on time to class, right? So if they come late, how is that going to work to drop it in and lock them up? And then now the bell rings, I have passing time to get to my next class. Do I release the cell phones before passing time? Do I release them at the bell? And then by the time they get them and get to class. So that's why I don't know if that's an option that I would recommend. To me, it's either they have them and they get them for open lunch and they just don't use them during the day, or we lock them up all day. I'm not sure how we could, especially with some of our larger class sizes, I'm not sure how you can navigate that and allow the students to get to their next class to then lock them up in their next class, especially when some of our students have to go to far ends of the building. I mean, some of the kids have to go into the middle school for orchestra up to the third floor.
I don't think it's all that different than putting them in a shoe, like slot, really. You have to put them in there,
Yeah.
waiting for kids, waiting for them to put it in, and you unlock them at minute to go instruction. Like, I don't know. That didn't seem like that big a difference to me.
Yeah.
But
I also want to say, I know talking a lot about this issue, but we've been talking a lot about open lunch, and it's important that students who go off campus have their cell phones. It was the case before cell phones. I assume people had open lunch, maybe they didn't, but it wasn't the end of the world. They couldn't call their parents. Be that as it may, there are lots of kids who don't have open lunch. And, I see this with students I teach, right? In the cafeterias and, donut shops, whatever else on campus, coffee shops, groups of kids standing around, sitting around, looking at their phones, not talking to each other. And it's not because they don't want to talk or they dislike each other, but the phone is this constant temptation. You'd rather, scroll through whatever the feed is showing you. And so by allowing, because we're so concerned about kids who do open lunch having access to their cell phones, now everyone, during whether they do open lunch or not, has access to their cell phones, and they're not talking to each other. They're not looking at each other. They're not interacting during their free time off from class. And I'm sure the same thing happens in the hallway as well. I think the trade-off is not worth it.
So, I mean, one suggestion that we could do is, I mean, the hope was, because it has to do 2 reads, was to get this ready for the start of school. I mean, we could table it and then come back for a first read in August, second read in September, and then go forth with whatever the change is for October, knowing that the month of September would be last year's. I'm just giving other options. I don't know. We keep circling here, and I don't know.
Have to only do it in September. Can we not implement it in January if we see that?
Oh, you can do
something's
whenever.
not working. I
mean, again, like I said, you could pass tonight the recommendation. We can monitor it, and if there needs to be a change, we have a 2-month window, right? Because it would have to go for an additional first read and second read if we change it, which gives us the time to implement the new schedule and buy the resources.
I mean, it doesn't look like it's really a change from last year. It's just.
Well, it's just the change is that it's during non-instructional time, which is going to be a change for the high school. The change really becomes, for last year, the students were able to use it during passing time, during study hall, and non-instructional time. I don't know when else what non-instructional time was, but lunch, non-instructional time. But this year it's not at all. They can't use it in study hall. They can't use it during passing. They can't use it during lunch.
I'm more
On campus.
I'm more expressing concern about some of the communication around this and not having the understanding. I don't think you can change this in the middle of the year. I think that puts teachers and administrators in a really hard position. So I'm saying more looking forward. I think we're implementing more or less how we did last year with really clear communication with students that in passing time, and in these other non-instructional times, right, that they also can't be using it, right? And that's by state law. So this is more about the schools implementing that. And then depending if this works, if not, then looking at something. But I think removing them from open lunch would be a real concern in the community. But then it's like, what other options are there? And I think there's one, but it's not ideal, but I don't necessarily know all of them are ideal. So I'm more a proponent of moving forward. Now we kind of know what was happening last year, seeing how that goes and tracking it with data. I think it'd be interesting to see some of the data from last year, but I kind of feel you don't want to put teachers in the position and administration in the position of changing this mid-year.
So we'll make that the priority agenda item for our first central leadership team that's on the calendar for next year. Yeah.
So if this path, we just have to do a second reading. I'm curious to see what how parents actually do feel about it. The majority may not have a problem with their children not having their phones on them for lunch. So I'm just curious to see what happens there and kind of base it around that.
Okay. Yeah, and students. Students spread the word. We're looking for
That's in the
You can send us emails.
Process question. If we approve it on first reading, does the second reading happen the very next meeting, or does it happen whenever we want it to happen? In other words, how much time is there for feedback from parents and community members and students and all that? Like if we approve it now, is in the August meeting, is that in the second reading?
Yes, August is second reading. The state did not give us much time.
A subsequent process question. If we approve,
This would have to go back to first reading, right?
It's correct.
that was my,
Any changes now would have to go back to a first reading. So
thank you, Nikki.
yes.
Okay. In that case, we're going to move on to our second public comment portion of the evening. Again, if there's anyone here in person who would like to speak, now's your time.
Hi, my name is Arden Lee. I'm a rising senior now at the high school. Sorry. I'm a rising senior now at Highland Park High School, and given that there's been a lot of discussion and debate on how we should exactly implement the phone policy, I thought I should probably contribute a little of my few cents because I'm a student who actually experiences the policy that's debated and can often seem very abstract and theoretical when considered on a board level. So the first thing is, I do agree with some of the board members and their concerns raised about how this new policy seems like a very similar iteration of the one that was proposed and implemented last year. But the issue with the one last year, and honestly, I don't think I saw that much phone use, at least in the beginning of the year, when the policy was enacted, was that there wasn't clear communication with the student body about what the expectations were. And part of that asymmetry across the board is because teachers were the individuals responsible for strengthening the policy. And they obviously don't have a lot of time to do that. They only have like 50 minutes of actual instructional time. And most of that they want to dedicate, rightfully so, to actually teaching their students. So when you're considering a policy like that, I think having clear communication channels between teachers and board members is important because you want to see what they want to sacrifice. If we do have a homeroom period at the beginning of the day, and if we have check-in times before the end of school, that time is cutting into the amount of that we ultimately give to teachers for instructional time. And even 5 minutes for the morning announcements is a lot for some people. So we want to make sure that we're not further sacrificing that just to implement a phone policy that honestly enterprising students will still find a way to kind of circumvent. Another thing is I feel like we need to be more aware of how capable and confident some high school students are. I know we could go on all day about the attention span crisis or how often students are using their phones, but if you actually are transparent and clear with them, I find that they actually are willing to work with you more than you probably think. It's important that we don't put down students early on and that there's actual discussion with students first when you're implementing a policy that directly impacts them. I think there's a lot of separation that can happen between the board and the student body, but if we're actually telling them why we need a policy like this, if we're telling them what the implications mean, I think they'll actually be willing to keep their phones in their backpacks a little more. Overall, when you're considering this new policy, whether I can't speak on behalf of everyone right now on whether or not we should be doing one that's full day where they lock up their phones in the morning, or if we should just let them for at least 1 year show that they can actually demonstrate their capabilities as students. But I do want to put in something that I realized throughout the course of the discussion. Specifically for open lunch, not only do I think that some parents would have a big concern with it, I also want us to look at how we purchase things nowadays. I personally never bring my card with me anymore, and I know a lot of students don't. There's something called Apple Pay and cashless modes of actually paying for things that most high school students use now. That's something that's going to impact open lunch. And even though not everyone utilizes open lunch, it's still something that students prioritize. So that's something to take into consideration as well. Overall, I think there needs to be more transparency across the board. I hope in this coming year that students are more aware of what this board does. And while I know that I'm the only high school student here and have been for a while, just be clear with students. Don't put them down too early. Be transparent with all your policies. This is something that directly impacts them. And there is no one size fits all. And I don't think that we should be afraid of adapting, but just believe in them a little more and they'll definitely be receptive.
So much. Yeah. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak in person? Okay. Do we have anyone online? I'm sorry, Any hands up? Anyone online who'd like to speak? Okay, in that case, we are going to close the second public comment section of the evening and move on to board action items.
For curriculum instruction, I move items 1 through 7.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Cassel Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio, Ms. Bardman.
Yes.
Oh, for finance and facilities, I move numbers 1 through 24.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
I'm a yes, except for item 23, I'm abstaining.
Ms. Cassel Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes, except a no on number 21.
Dr. Schoolman,
No on 21, yes on everything else.
Ms. Stanio,
Abstain from 21 and yes to everything else.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes.
Motion carries. Number 21.
So then for personnel, I move agenda items 1 through 5.
Second.
Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Cassel Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman, Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Mr.
Congratulations.
Grossman, welcome aboard. Come to all of these.
I was going to say thank you so much and congratulations. I know we talked about you have a very early day tomorrow morning. So if you need to leave, feel free to do so. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Congratulations.
Lots of luck to you.
Okay, and then on policies and regulations, I move agenda items 1 and 2.
Second.
Sorry. Dr. Beatty,
Yes.
Ms. Cassel Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Maldonado,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
No on 1, yes on 2.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes. Okay, and now we can move on to our board liaison reports. Does anyone have?
I have a report for the Commission on Universal Access. They have wanted to sponsor a field trip for Irving students to go to Rock the Gym. It looks like that is moving forward. We got the district invoice that and the commission is, I think, signing their papers, and so that looks like it'll move forward. So they're really excited about that. So I think there's 16 Irving students who will hopefully go on that in the fall if we approve that field trip. But they're very excited about it. They also got a number of cards from students in the GLOW program, GLOW and GLOW Junior, that were very much appreciated. And that really kind of spoke to how the money had kind of supported them. And so those are two things that they've really supported our students on. And so I just wanted to mention that will be probably something in the future we'll be voting on in field trips.
For the Highland Park Education Foundation, I was not able to attend the last meeting, but our friend Max Weber, who was here until recently, was kind enough to give me an update. They had the successful 80s fundraiser in April. They are already planning the next fundraiser. They're planning one for the end of the year and planning some others for next year. So they are hard at work trying to come up with funds to supplement our enrichment activities. And we thank them for their efforts.
If that is all, I do not have a president's report, so I would like to move to old business.
Sure, so I have something. So the committees weren't able to meet, but it will be going on for August, but I'm really excited. I know it was briefly mentioned about support for the Chromebooks and parental support around that for the devices at home to help for monitoring. And I spoke to Mr. Lubis, the tech manager today, and we're going to working on our marketing rollout for that, but we're really excited. And I can't wait to share with committee next month. LineWise is the filtering group that we use, but they partnered with, oh God, it starts with a Q, Custodio. Thank you, Custodio. And what they do, it's actually a free service that will help with the Chromebooks, that parents can get controls of the Chromebook at home or outside of the classroom or outside of the school day. So it'll be set for our controls during the school day, but in the evenings, on weekends, and in holidays, parents can set those controls for YouTube, very specific time, specific websites, things like that. It's phenomenal. We're going to be very excited.
The look on Dr. Schoolman's face.
But
right?
plot twist, guess what else they give us? Guess what else? They give us for each parent per kid. So it's if you have multiple children, you get multiple of them, but it's for one kid, one personal device. So if I have 3 kids, I get 3 personal devices. If I have 1 kid, I'd have 1 personal device. So if you want to do that on your child's personal cell phone or personal computer, you get 1 free personal device per kid as well. That's 24/7 because we don't regulate on our things of personal devices, but you could use their service for free for one device per child as well that comes with it. It's really, really awesome. I have a lot to share about that in committee, and then we're coming out with our rollout plan. So coming soon, but I wanted to share that we've been actively working on the technology piece. We hear you. Some things just take a little bit longer, but we're getting there, but I wanted to share coming soon. So please come to your committee meetings. In August, it's going to be fantastic. I have a whole presentation to share with you that shows how to use it. It's very user-friendly. I was on a webinar with them. It is phenomenal. And thank you to the tech department for that hard work. They found the research. They did the research. They reached out. We made sure there were no strings attached. We dotted every I. Crossed every T with this one to make sure we're putting a great product out there to our families that are interested. And it even goes not that Irving students would have devices, but it goes for everybody in the whole district. So not just grades 2 through 12. So really exciting stuff coming soon. So September is going to be fantastic. So look forward to my communication regarding all of that. Thank you.
I have some other old business. I mentioned a couple of months ago that I was in conversations with the folks at the Heldrich Center who were putting together some sort of program to match folks from the STEM high school in Middlesex with potential educational and work opportunities at the New Jersey Innovation Hub at the Helix in New Brunswick. They were willing to talk about extending that at the individual district level. I have a meeting with folks at the Heldrich Center on Tuesday to talk about that for Highland Park, and hopefully have a roadmap to, after that, seeing how to plug the district into whatever is going on there in the hopes of generating some opportunities for our students with that project.
Awesome. Any other old business? New business? In that case, I move that we adjourn.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good night.